for making time. Yeah, that's important that we start recording, so I'll start over. So thank you for making time and joining us for this meeting. We'll go through the agenda in order. So welcome, and take a look at the agenda, see if there are any other items that we're missing or that you'd like to add. If not, then I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. This is Todd.
I'll give it a second then.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. And what was that? That was Chris, the second.
Yep.
So all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? And motion passes. And actually, we didn't do introduction. So John, do you mind going through roll?
Sure. All right, Andrew Klein
I'm here.
here. Charles is ex officio. Sue Kaufman.
Here.
See you. All right, and Mark Sniffen, are you here?
Yeah, present.
All right, Sean Carlstrom,
Hi, I'm here.
welcome. And Damon is not part of it. Corey Thomas
I am here.
and Todd, are you here?
I am here.
Welcome. Robert Graper. All right, Rob not here yet. Chris Seaman is here.
Yep.
Al Spalding,
Here.
welcome. And Mike Barth.
I'm here.
All right, looks like we have, and then Will Rodriguez. Yeah, we already talked about that. So yeah, it looks like we have a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you. Anyone else like to introduce themselves before we continue on with the agenda?
I'm Thad
All right.
Kurtz. I'm here as an interested citizen.
Thank you, Thad, and welcome. Thad, and welcome. All righty, so we approve the agenda. Next up, let's review and approve the summary minutes. John, do you mind pulling those up?
And I can scroll through these.
Okay.
Let me know if you need me to scroll through them.
Yeah, if you want to scroll in a little bit toward the bottom. All right, any edits or revisions anyone sees?
I'd move to approve.
Thank you. Can we
Second.
get a, thank you, Sue. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And motion passes. So now on to business. We've got a few remaining code change proposals, which John has brought up here.
So the two that we have tabled, it looks like 143 non-structured components. And then 427 is tied to the EV charging, which is similar. It's obviously tied to the stuff that Stoyan has put together for you guys. So we can do it in whichever order, I guess, makes sense.
I think for the EV charging, we should see what Stoyan put together first. And then we can go from there. For what was it, 40?
Eric Van
What was that?
Way, number 143.
143. Okay, for non-structural components there. I did not have a chance to reach out to Eric. So I don't think we'll have any more information now than we did last meeting. If it's okay with everyone, why don't we move forward to, we'll go over what Stoyan put together. I will see if I can call Eric quickly to jump on so that we can go over, his code change proposal. If not, then we can decide if we want to take an action. It sounded like we were going to disapprove that, without any additional information. But, we'll see what Eric has to say.
Okay.
Okay, so, we'll move on to the next,
Yeah, sure. So these are the items and I'm basically just passing them along to you guys. Either, can you see this screen here, with the Word document in it? You guys able to see this?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. So this is what Stoyan put together for the, when you guys had discussed the 1 and 2 family dwellings. These are a couple of different examples that he put together for the, for the load management system. This is that example, that excerpt that he put together. Let's see how big it is. And I can scroll through this as needed. So just let me know as you guys, if you'd like to read through it.
I have a question. Are they supposed to be kind of additive to each other? Like you would use example 1 and 2 or?
I'm actually not sure how he wrote it. I think he was giving different examples of those. Yeah.
Those look like 2 examples to me. The first example is it's the size of the hose, right? So when you're plugging a car, that first one is a full capacity charging station is example 1. And then example 2 is if you're providing more than one place to plug in, more than beyond the required amount, you can now regulate how much current is going to each one. So you've provided the capacity of the required charging, but now you're spreading it out over more plugs. Does that make sense, Sue? So we've got, like at a
These
fuel
are kind of
station,
so these are 2 different issues that you could use both of them, not necessarily one or the other.
there are
that-
2 ways to comply. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So like, imagine like I think the way to relate it to stuff we all know is going to be is if when you go to the gas station, let's imagine there's only one actual thing, one pump pumping fuel, but now we're spreading it out over multiple nozzles. So we're getting the same flow, but multiple nozzles. But the code requirement is that 40 amp circuit for total flow. Now we're spreading it out over multiple plugs. Is how I see it.
Did Stoyan have a recommendation on for these examples, what he would recommend?
No, I think he does a good job of trying to make sure that he presents whatever he can as fairly as possible. And then he lets the tag decide is really his stance on it. So no, he didn't have any direction or anything. And it's mostly just to kind of give you guys a starting point to go off of. And, if you decide to go with it, that's fine. But he's trying to find, from what I understand, working with him the short time I've been here, is just try to find that kind of that even place that seems the most prudent. And that's what he's trying to put together. So unfortunately, no direction.
This is Mark. I'm trying to understand this a little bit. So this is a relationship to that House bill where they're trying to are they already adopted this language somewhat, and they're just trying to clarify that? Is that what we're working on here?
Yeah, I believe this is all tied to 1287. So the documents I've got are this here. I've got the 1287, which we've gone over, we've covered. And you guys have probably had a chance to read. And then just, I guess, for a little foreshadowing, the other thing that he gave me as well is the EV. These are some of the options. And this is what he put together. Another one of those kind of vanilla, middle of the road is I guess, as prudent as he could make it, to give you guys something to think about. So these are the 3 documents that I've got from him today. This here, which is fairly straightforward, that 1287 that we've looked at before, and then the that load management document.
And so in the page you were just on, they did indicate the voltage. On here, I'm not seeing any kind of voltage. And I don't think they're, you know, from the little bit of research I did, you can go 110 or 240 or 208. And it depends on how much time you want the EV to charge. So what I read is it's 16 amps for an 8-hour charge, and it's 34 amps for a 4-hour charge. And I think this language is kind of vague, because when we're talking about the size of the circuits, and you're alluding to a 40 amp, we should at least put the voltage, and we should, you know, there's also some 3-phase voltages you can use. It's not just the 220 volts. And I don't know if we know enough about the nature of all the cars and what they demand. You can also, and the reason I'm saying this, the research I'm doing is the city of Mount Vernon is looking to put a multi-story parking structure, and they want to serve 240 parking spots with EV service. And I'm kind of struggling with that, because the service size gets huge. And the only way you can effectively do that is to bump up the voltage to 480 volts. So it's 480, 277. So, you know, you could serve these cars at either 208, 277, 110. So, I mean, there's a lot of nuances in this, and there are kind of design guidelines. And I don't know, I think the more we step away from design guidelines, the better the applicability of the code will be, and allow you to use different voltages and decide what amperage you want to put, because the EV cars will plug into a 110. You just don't get the quick charging that you want. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense to me, Mark. Yeah, this is going above and beyond prescriptively what I thought we were going to do. From my reading of the bill, we don't need to go into this much detail. And, you know, and since we are dealing with single family homes, or townhouses where everything would be through a circuit breaker for that single family home, I'm not sure it's necessarily as complicated either as what you're talking about. So just having, you know, a 208, you know, volt availability for that, you know, I think if we're gonna say something, we should probably require at least the 208, you know, 2 things together. You know, otherwise, what's the point? But you know, a lot of you have a lot more expertise electrically than I do, so I defer expertise to to other members of the group.
Well, I think that the example 3 is at least giving you the breaker rating size, but I think it really is a calculated number per circuit. So for instance, if you have a minimum 30 amp circuit and you say, oh, we're gonna have 2 charging stations per 30 amp circuit, well, that means that that 30 amp circuit won't be the quick charge one, and you're loading both of them at 110 volts, not 220 volts. Or I don't think we know enough about the product that you're using amongst manufacturers of several different kinds of cars. There's not a standardization there that I found, and I think that's going to be problematic. And I hate to see us trying to design stuff that should really be in the electrical code into building code language. I think as much as we can take out, I think that the bill was passed, and I think from what I'm understanding, we're trying to fix the bill that's already been passed. Is that correct?
Yeah, the bill's done, so we've got to implement what the
Yeah, I
bill.
wouldn't say we're trying to fix it. I'd say we're trying to make it into words that we can enforce and convey the info to other people like us who don't understand electrical.
Yeah, okay. So I think that this, my outright opinion is this should be in the electrical code and not the building code, but that's too late. I understand that. But I think the less specifics we give, the more chance we'll have of forcing people into a somewhat of a design. So, I would recommend that we put as least language as we can, being specific about amperage, voltage, size, because there's too many. As I said, the one that we're looking at, even with at 480 volts, it's going to be 2,000 or 3,000 amps. We're going to have to add to the service to try to electrify all these vehicles simultaneously. And the problem is, it's the distribution of that is going to be crazy. I don't even know how the design is going to work.
Mark, when you say all these, remember we're talking about single family homes. So
now, is this only for single family homes?
yeah, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but
That's not what I understood. The House bill, I think we need to understand what the House bill really says before we could.
yeah, John, do you mind pulling the House bill up again? So we can
Yeah.
look at that?
And then
Thad,
we actually have a comment from the public. Thad, did you
Yeah.
want to chat?
go ahead, Thad. Thank you.
And yeah, I'll pull up the House bill.
Yep. Thad, floor is yours if now's a good time for you to give your
I just
comment.
wanted to say that as I understand these options, the issue is really whether and how you can use the load management system to split the available power so that each car gets a share of it. That first option doesn't allow you basically to use a load management system. It says that every space has to get the full rated amperage for the charger. I guess you could use a load management circuit if you were going to, if you put in chargers that didn't draw a lot and you had a circuit that provided a lot of power that you were splitting. But as I read them, the different options are basically about thinking about what kind of rules you're going to apply to systems in which you're using a load management system. Those are definitely not single family houses. There's no point in that I can see in even thinking about a load management system for if you're going to put in one 240 level 2 charger in your garage.
I think we accidentally had somebody come that knows what they're talking about. So thanks for being here.
And yeah, I can share this other side here. And
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
here is
Thad.
the House bill. I think that's part of the challenge was trying to decipher some of this stuff. So here's this, and it's kind of big. I can scroll through it if you guys want me to just
Yeah,
continue.
skip all the whereas stuff. This is all the why we're doing it.
And then I guess also on the SBCC website, this is a public service announcement I should have made earlier. Under the building tag, meetings, schedules, and agendas, I'm updating this and constantly trying to stay on top of it. I have all these documents are actually here in this reference documents page. So any of the documents that we have during these meetings, I'm trying to stick them in here. And then there's also one down here for each of the meetings. So the House Bill 1287 is here if you want to pull it up. The one we're looking at. Let's see. So Chris, you were saying just through all this stuff.
Yeah, let's get down to the meat of it. And Thad and anyone else, feel free to speak up unless a motion has been made that we're discussing. And anyone's free to speak up at any time.
So I mean, I have a question. We already have EV charging requirements for the IBC, and it was my understanding we were needing to add them to the IRC for this time. Is that correct? Or maybe some additional requirements for IBC?
That's what we're checking. My understanding too was, it was just the IRC and IBC for single family homes that fell into that, meaning over 3 stories. But it was
odd though that they have, if we're talking about things like 20 or more parking spaces, you'd never have that in a single family.
Yeah, what I recall the need to be was we were trying to figure out how to get language in that tells you how to deal with load management. Since our job for enforcement is making sure that there's pathways and capacity and space for the future electrical gear. So that the capacity on the transformation and then space for the panels and then conduit from the panels to parking spaces. And then what I remember us discussing was, how do we know how big that is? Especially when there's load management stuff going on. So I thought what we were trying to do is figure out how to say, this is how big stuff gets, or this is how you could split up stuff.
And that's where the electrical code already dictates all of that. But it has the demand factors and so forth for.
Yep.
So
except that we don't know anything about that.
No, but all the more reason to not, that we shouldn't have any of those things dictated by the building code. Those should come really out of the electrical code.
John, do you mind scrolling up just a little bit to the end of page 3 where it opens section 4? So we've got here, the Building Code Council shall adopt rules for EV infrastructure requirements. Rules adopted by the State Building Code Council must consider applicable national and international standards and be consistent with rules adopted under that RCW, except as provided in B. Rules adopted under this section must require EV charging capability to all new buildings that provide on-site parking. So all of this, John, has this all been implemented? So 2A here, all new buildings that provide on-site parking where parking is provided the greater of 1 space or 10%, rounded the next whole number. Electric room serving, blah, blah, blah. I think, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think 2A there has already been addressed and we put that into the code.
I agree. That's what I think it reads now.
Yeah.
Okay, so then for B, for occupancies classified, so that's the exception there. So occupancies classified as assembly, education, mercantile requirements section only apply to employees. So that's been implemented. And then what they changed there, the requirements section do not apply to R3, utility, or miscellaneous. So what they're changing now is the R3. So now C, so it looks like C and then 3A and B are the new pieces, which is probably all we need to address. So see, except for the rules related to residential R3, the required rule required under this subsection must be implemented by July 1st, 2021. The rules required under this subsection for occupancies classified as R3 must be implemented by July 1st, 2024. Okay, so we are only addressing 3A and 3B from my reading of this. Does anyone disagree?
No, but I agree.
Okay, let me read through that if you have the patience for me just to read through it one more time, and then that's what we'll discuss so we can implement. So 3A, the rules adopted under this section must exceed the specific minimum requirements established under subsection 2 of this section for all types of residential and commercial buildings to the extent necessary to support the anticipated level of zero emission vehicle use that result from the zero emission vehicle program requirements in chapter 70A.30 RCW and that result in emissions reductions consistent with that other RCW. The rules required under this subsection must be implemented by July 1st. So it sounds like, yeah, we've got to go back with new rules for everything. And then we're going to have to pull up those RCWs to determine what it means to be to support the anticipated levels. So yeah, hopefully those RCWs give anticipated levels, and then from there, you know, we can probably go back into the existing language and change where it says things like 10%, you know, and bump it up. I don't know. Feel free to speak up.
So this is Mark. I just wanted to clarify. I thought at last meeting, one initial question was the way they wrote that is R3. Did that include the IRC code? And that's what our discussion was last meeting was, hey, we were going to reach out and make sure. And it sounded like we kind of agreed that their intention was to include the IRC into the format as well, from my memory. So
right, that was my memory too. So that's why what Stoyan had put together seemed a lot more complicated. If we're putting something just into the residential code and then something into the building code for R3s, you know, we're just talking about an individual dwelling unit there, which, you know, probably we could have a single sentence or two sentences in a new subsection or section, you know, requiring that capability.
Well, and I recall that this load management piece of the legislation was kind of different than the question of whether or not who it applies to. So I think we had an original, the reason that Stoyvitz put those options in was to talk about the load management, which would not really be applicable to single family residents, as far as I would think.
And then I think, and I wish he was here to talk about it. I think this is also, I'll share this other screen. I think, and I wish I had more technical knowledge to help, but this is, I believe, what he was trying to put together for that to address the residency. I think this is the document he was putting together. We didn't have a chance to look at this just yet in detail. Can you guys see that Word document now?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I see that there's some of their hand up there, Annabelle, it looks like.
Oh, yes,
If you
Annabelle.
wanna-
Yeah, hi, I just wanted to chime in. This is Annabelle Drayton with the Northwest Energy Coalition. My colleague Amy Wheelis flagged this meeting for me. I don't have full background on everything that's been discussed at these meetings, but just wanted to weigh in on the RCW that it does reference, specifically 70A30. That directs the Department of Ecology to adopt California's motor vehicle emission standards, which that rulemaking is currently underway at Ecology, and there will be a second one in 2022. And so it does direct the, it does include like specific vehicle sales requirements on an annual basis. And so I think that will be helpful, and I'm happy to provide more information there if needed.
Yeah, thank you, Annabelle. Yeah, that might be helpful if you can provide more. Unless it's easy, once we pull up the RCWs, if that's all listed out, then I don't want to create work for you if, you know, it's pretty self-evident. But if you've got to dig in and you think it'd be helpful for us, you know, we'll take all the help we can get.
I don't believe it is entirely self-evident. I'm sure with some digging you all could figure it out, but I'm happy to share some of the other information there.
Okay, thank you.
Andrew, when I'm reading our existing state amendments to 429, I think it is, there is nothing about load management. So I think we have two jobs. One is get it in the IRC, which is a different tag. And then the other job is to figure out how to explain load management in our amendments.
So where, just to be clear, where is the load management requirement in this bill?
I believe it is. Oh, geez, I hate how they do this.
I did do a search, it came up 3 times.
Yeah. What is that subsection?
Well, we've got 2A on page 11.
On page 10, there's a bunch of underlined text that talks about forecasts and things. Or no,
Page
that's
10.
Yeah.
These here.
Yeah, but that, I guess that's the utility. That's not us.
Right. I'm wondering if we need to address that.
Yeah.
I don't think we do. And I don't want to add stuff in that we're not required to, because again, then we're creating standards at that point.
Was that an ask though from some? This was a long time ago. We had this conversation originally. Was it an ask from builders that we allow the load management?
I can't imagine builders would ask that, because usually the single family home builders, you know, well, they wouldn't need it. And I don't see why.
Oh no, I'm thinking outside the context of single family.
Okay.
I'm thinking building code, buildings.
Yeah, or was it asked by the governor?
The load management's in the bill. Sorry to interrupt that way. 2A, middle of the paragraph. Load management infrastructure may be used to adjust the size and capacity of the required building electric service equipment, blah, blah, blah.
It would seem like that belongs then with L&I. Has anybody talked to L&I's electrical side about this? Because that's where that component then should be addressed.
It says it says there may be used to adjust the size and capacity.
Right, Andrew, but I think the problem is, and I don't disagree with Mike, that I wish it was in with L&I, but the way our amendments are written say what the capacity needs to be available for each parking space. And it doesn't allow for the use of a load management. There's no exception.
So
our existing
I think
stuff.
is what we're talking about. This is Mike. I think is what we're talking about. What we passed is there's current language in correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew. I think it's in CR 103 or CR 104 at this point that has language about load management, although it's inaccurate. That was what was brought up by Rod Munch from the electrical folks at L&I. And so it's in there in that CR 104. I'm not sure if John McIntyre has access to that or if they can pull that up, but that new language that we developed has that load management information in there.
I'm not sure if I can find it right now.
So Micah, if that is the case, do you think we have, you know, basically we've put an exception in there for load management, and then that's sufficient, you know, to address what we've got up here on the screen that John has highlighted?
Yes, we put it in there. Is it sufficient? I
Right.
think Rod made the fact that no, it's not. But unfortunately, that's a language that got passed by the council. And so I think that what you're asking, have we addressed it currently? I believe that we have. I think that's also what Sue brought up, and John, Sue made the point in the chat, was that we believe that we've addressed what they're requesting in this. Yes. So speak up if I'm wrong.
Yeah, this really is a utility issue. And John, are you able to find that? And if you're not meaning to speak, could you please go into mute?
Yeah, and I'm not seeing it. I'm not sure where that's at, unfortunately.
Okay, but we
I don't have
can
access to it.
pull that up eventually.
Yeah.
So
Article,
no, go ahead.
Article 625 in the NFPA directs you to UL 2594-2013 for the standard for electrical vehicle supply equipment. I don't have access to that right now, but I would imagine that would lay it all out for you.
Okay, yeah, we are supposed to be using national and international standards. That might be a good one to refer to if makes sense.
Hey, Andrew, John, this is Micah. You can find that electrical vehicle infrastructure rule that's under consideration from the link from the last council meeting on June 18th.
Oh, okay.
So if you go to the SBCC website, of course, and go to that council archive, that information is there if you want to pull that up.
Nice. I will figure all this stuff out. Sorry, guys, I'm still learning where everything is. And you said, in the council meeting. June 18th. And which one was it?
When I'm under past meetings, it's the first one on the list, electrical vehicle infrastructure rule under consideration
Oh, that's the
from the
one.
June 18th, 2021 meeting.
There it is. Are you guys able to see it?
Yep.
Oh,
Thank you.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. And you said this addressed load management.
Yep, there it is, load management. Just the size and capacity.
So this is John Sue. Just real quickly, I mean, it seems to me, doesn't that, if you scroll back up to toward the top, sorry, there's an exception for R3s. Isn't that what we're supposed to get rid of by the Senate, by the House bill?
Yeah, I think in the building code, yeah, it may be as simple as just deleting the exception for the R3. You're right. But then of course in the IRC, we'll have to put
You have
in
to add it, yeah.
something. So yeah, it looks to me we address load management. We'll address R3. We can delete that exception. You know, and then maybe go through stuff if we're talking about parking spaces, since you're not going to have a parking space in R3. You know, maybe add something in about, you know, if you've got a driveway or something else. I don't know.
Process-wise, how do we go about this? Is there a proposal in where we can strike the R3 and the exception?
Not right now, no, but I think that the easiest thing to do would be, you know, what we eventually need to do is put together a proposal where we would do that. So we would have all of this as current language because, you know, it'll be accepted. And then, you know, we would strike out the R3. And if we need to put any additional changes throughout, we can do that. But speak up if you disagree. But I think we, you know, if we take out the R3, and then read through to make sure that we don't have to make any other small changes there for R3, that addresses everything we need to building code wise. For the time being, of course, we have that other task, by 2024 that we've got to increase the number of EV capabilities.
That seems to make sense to me, but did this, the one that went through full council, didn't this already increase the number of spaces?
Well, it increased the number of spaces based on what we need to have right now. And then from what is it, 12, from the House Bill 1287, it has a section for future years as well, by 2024, that we have to update it past what we have now. But that I think we would deal with a little bit later. I don't know if it's something we're dealing with right now. We've got time at least.
Somebody has their hand up.
Oh yeah, Annabelle, do you mean to have your hand up?
Yes, hi, and I had a question about the 2024 timeline. So it sounds like there was some conversation about the intent of the legislation and kind of a technical error in that R3 doesn't cover all residential building types, and apologies if I'm not getting the terminology correct. When you all look to address that 2024 kind of requirement or direction from the legislature, will you be including all types of kind of residential buildings, including single family and like duplexes?
So yes, as of now, unless we change our decision, but it seems the consensus now is yes, we'll be including all single family homes, duplexes, townhomes, because that was the intent of this bill.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. That is also my understanding of the intent of the legislation, and that in removing that exemption, it was my understanding that some local governments felt that the exemption didn't allow them to go above and beyond with their EV readiness. And so removing that also removes that conflict for them as well. So hope that's helpful context.
Yep. Thank you. I don't know, John, I'll defer fearless leader status to you. What I think we should do, I think, as far as the IBC goes, we should, strike the R3 and the exception, and then put that together. We can look at that next time, see if we want to make any other changes. And then, we'll look at the IBC and maybe put some sort of sentence, right? That'd be the IRC. Then we look at the IRC, and add a sentence or two as necessary for, EV charging capabilities. And I think that satisfies our responsibilities. But,
Yeah. Okay. I mean, yeah, I think you're on track, and then I can always circle back with Stolian and see if he does have any more direction that he wants to give on this.
Okay, yeah, and we can reference UL or NFPA standards. Probably it'd be UL standards. We already referenced the NEC, but yeah, if it makes sense to reference any UL standards, that's in the bill too, that would be consistent with national and international standards. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that works.
Okay, so yeah, we'll use this, what you've got up as the jumping off point, for the amendment that we'll do in the IBC at least.
Okay.
And yeah, for the IRC, if you want to pull up Stoyan's language there, he probably had something put together that we could say that's perfect, that should go in the IRC verbatim or with a few changes.
You mean this here?
Yep.
Yeah.
And if anyone thinks I'm off track, feel free to speak up. It's a democracy. I'm just trying to keep things moving. So.
Well, I would recommend that we try to understand the question better. Myself, I think we need Stoivis to come in and explain what his reasoning and what the true question is, because I'm still kind of confused what the question is.
Yeah. And it may not be a bad idea. Stoyan's background is not just electrical engineering. He did a lot of this work in California, specifically for EV charging and EV parking. So it may not be a bad idea to have him here to continue the discussion and maybe not make any decisions on it, just kind of wait. And I hate to postpone and, to Andrew's point, like you were saying, moving things forward, but if there's concern, maybe it's a good idea to wait for him.
Yeah, if we've got the time, and it sounds like we do.
I think we do.
We can wait on him.
I think we're okay. I mean, we have a couple other meetings scheduled for the 1st and 15th of September, and those are as necessary. And then we've got another one on the 18th. So.
Okay. And the 18th, I will not be available. I'll be in the air like Stoyan is now. Todd, would you be able to lead the discussion on the 18th? If you're still on, Todd. You might have walked away. I'll be calling you and asking you though.
Nice.
Yeah, it sounds like we've got time here. We can continue the discussion if anyone has more to say, but we've discussed what we've looked at what's in the bill. We've discussed what we've got in the code, what we need to add to the code and so forth. But feel free to bring up anything else or reiterate.
No, this is Al. I just concur with Mark's comments.
Okay. So did you want to look at the EV proposal since it's fresh in our minds and we just discussed this, or did you want to just keep that on the warmer and take a look at that after we address this again with Stoyan?
Are you asking me?
No, I was asking in general.
Do we have the proponent on for the EV proposal?
Kathleen Petrie.
That would be really helpful if at the time that we, do discuss this, that we'd have the proponent here.
Yeah, why don't we reach out? Maybe next time we can have her and Eric on to go back over those two proposals. But I agree, Sue. It'd be nice to have her walk through that. All righty. Any other comments or questions regarding stuff? I think we're close to the end. I got to pull up the agenda again, but
Yeah, do you need a motion to table it?
yeah, I think we do.
Okay.
Yeah, we should have a motion to table those.
Would you like to make one?
Sure, I'll motion to table this topic till we have the proponents available.
Okay,
Oh, I would second that.
thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? And motion passes. So, all right, we will table this until 2 weeks from now. And then we'll keep Eric's tabled as well. We've got time on that, John. We don't need to make any decisions quite yet.
No, I think we're okay on that one too.
Okay,
Yeah, we're doing okay. I mean, we've got 2 of those meetings that we can use if we need to, so I think we're okay. We're on pace.
okay. So, all right, we're on to other business, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, other business. Anyone have anything?
Yeah, actually I do.
Go for it.
So in the fire code tag last week, we discussed the sound transit proposals, which I was gone for while everybody was for that week. We asked Sound Transit, we took issue with the way numbering worked on it and how it was referencing things. It really didn't read how we would like to see it, in that it had a bunch of NFPA sections listed. And so what we asked them to do was, actually it was Quinn Ty's catch. What we asked them to do was to go back and renumber things in a format very similar to how we have some amendments in the structural chapter, where it's like section 16.05.3, amendment to NF or amendment to ASCE this, right? So instead of just being a list of a bunch of NFPA numbers, they're going to bring it back in a format that matches building code numbering, and that actually then after that references. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that
Okay.
makes sense.
So expect to see a bunch of stuff come back from them on it, but that was the idea of why. So
Okay.
it'll look like a bunch of new stuff, but it's going to be a formatting thing mostly.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, you know, for the most part, when we went through stuff, they're really the only client that's using that. Of course, you know, code officials will be enforcing it, but I, you know, pretty much, you know, let them have it how they wanted it, since they're the ones using it, and you know, they're creating more requirements for themselves anyway. So
yeah, well, I had a different philosophy. I beat them up on it because they are the only person that needs it, and I was not happy to insert a million amendments on their behalf. So
you know what, an appendix would be nice for that, because
yes, I gave them my opinion on very many things, but that's okay.
okay, well, good. Okay, we'll keep an eye out for that from them.
Yeah, I think an appendix might be a problem for them because those are optional.
I know. I just don't like. I have
Well,
all the time in the world to tell how much I don't like how they approach their projects. I think that they're special and they're appropriate to have performance-based design with every station, but they don't want to put the work in for that, and they're not confident in the competency of the people they work with to review that kind of thing. I don't think they don't think jurisdictions are very easy to work with. So what are you gonna do?
Well, thank you, Chris. Anything else for the good of the order?
I actually have an item I'd like to ask a question about process.
Sure.
So with great thanks to the tag, you passed our loft proposal along with an approved. We discovered in the meantime that there is a conflict that it creates with another section in the code. How do we fix that? Do we just bring that back to the tag? Do we have to do that through public comment process? How do we do this?
No, just send it. You know, send it to me. Send it to John Stoyan, and then we can address it at the BFP.
Okay.
Meeting.
What would be the deadline for that?
I don't think we even have that for the next month or two, do we? John, do you
No,
have?
it's
can't
it's
even
gonna
make-
be, yeah, that's gonna be a ways off. So you've got a little bit of time.
Yeah, your deadline's prior to the meeting.
Great, and we get a couple days notice of the meeting, so, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, John. Anything else? All right. Hey, Chris, if Todd is unable or unwilling to be the chair in 2 weeks, are you available by any chance?
Let me check.
Okay. It's the
Um,
18th.
18th? Yeah.
I
I'm
should be
around.
fine.
Okay.
Andrew, if
Oh,
you
you
were
will?
asking
Okay.
earlier, yeah. I don't know if you heard me earlier, so yeah.
No, I didn't hear you. You were
Sorry.
okay. Well, thank you, Todd. I appreciate it.
But happy to
okay.
defer to Chris also, so.
Nope.
You
If you
can,
don't show up, I'll take it.
you
Got
can co-chair it or you can fight over it. So, all right, well, good. We've got two folks then who can take it. Anything else while we're on other business? All righty, well, enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of the week, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. I'll try to jump on if it goes long enough and I land. But otherwise, if you get through things quickly, I won't see you in 2 weeks. So thank you. We'll adjourn. I don't think we need a motion to adjourn. But